After waiting all day for school to be let out, I was finally ready to enjoy my summer vacation. I couldn't wait to start having fun in the sun, so to speak, spending days at the beach, running around with my friends, or just going to the local swimming pool. But as the bell rang and I stood in the entrance of the school, I couldn't help but sigh at the immense downpour before my eyes. The rain was heavy, and the skies were a sickly shade of gray. Perfect, I thought to myself. I hated the rain, especially when it threatened my fun. I watched from the shelter of the school as kids and teachers alike dashed out to their vehicles and buses to escape the torrent. I wasn't so lucky. My parents worked full-time and the school buses didn't stop anywhere near where I lived, so I had to walk home. I was hesitant to step out into the rain, as if I were about to dive into a pool. I knew that no matter how I tried to avoid it, I would be completely drenched by the time I made it home. Watching the last of the kids leave me behind, I finalized that it was now or never. I stepped out into the downpour, immediately regretting my decision as my foot found its way into a deep pothole, soaking my leg up to my knee. I felt irritation begin to settle within me as I trudged forward. After a few moments of walking, the sky started to become much darker, and the torrential downpour started to hinder my visibility. If it were not for the fact that I have walked home from school almost my entire life, I would have probably been completely lost. Over the years of commuting on foot to and from school, I've come across little shortcuts to make my trip a little faster, such as climbing over a few fences, cutting through a backyard or two, and ducking behind a corner store near my house. Making my way to the first fence was easy enough, though climbing it in this weather would prove troublesome. As I approached the chain link, I thought I heard something. It sounded like a voice behind me. I turned around to see if someone was yelling at me for attempting to climb this fence. Kids get yelled at all the time for hopping fences. Even I'm guilty of acquiring some scowls since I take this route every day. When I turned around, the dense rain splashed in my eyes and I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face, much less a person. At this point, I was far too annoyed to bother with any adults. If they wanted to yell at me, they'd simply have to catch me first. I turned back around and began climbing. When I got to the top of the fence and swung my leg over, my gaze drifted back towards the school. In the middle of the field that I had just crossed, from my height, I could make out the silhouette of someone standing directly in the center of the field. I felt a rush of nerves rattle up from inside me as I stared at this person just standing motionless in the middle of a field, in a downpour. That's when I heard the sound again. A voice. At first, it sounded much like a whisper, but the more I think about it, it sounded closer to a person who had just lost their voice. A dry rasping carried on the wind, barely breaking the sound of the rain. Upon hearing this voice, I felt my grip on the metal fence slip, and I fell 10 feet onto my back. If it were not for my backpack, I would have probably been knocked out cold. Coughing a few times and rising to my feet, I froze. I felt my body lock up and my heart drop into my stomach. The silhouette that I had seen earlier was now directly on the other side of the fence. I was completely petrified. Only mere moments before, this person was like 100 yards away. I felt like I was in a trance. Slowly, the figure raised a pale, skeletal hand and rested it upon the metal fence. Then it spoke to me in that raspy whisper, before pushing its hand through the fence and grabbing a hold of me. The sensation of being grabbed suddenly snapped me into a childlike tantrum. I thrashed and kicked the fence, trying to pry its grip from me. During my struggle to get free, I spun around and whipped my backpack at the fence, a childish attempt at fighting back. Then I ran. I ran through rain and mud, not stopping until I made it home, As soon as I entered my house, I immediately slammed and locked my front door. I ran up to my room and hid under the blankets, shaking, but admittedly not from the cold. After a few hours, my mother arrived home and called me down from my room. I was extremely hesitant to go downstairs, thinking it could be that creature simply pretending to be her so it could get me. I managed to gather a small sliver of courage and creep down the stairs. When I finally rounded the corner, my mother was standing in the kitchen, putting groceries away. A strong sigh of relief was quickly washed away as she turned and handed me my backpack. She scolded me for leaving it on the porch in the rain. I'm not sure why, but in that very moment, I remember exactly what that creature said to me just before it grabbed me